Good afternoon. My name is Erin Carroll. I'm with the Early Childhood team at the Louisiana Department of Education, and I want to thank you all for joining us for the Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate webinar updates for July 2018. We are going to go ahead and get started. A few things before we dig in. This webinar will walk us through several different things related to the Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate. We will post these slides as well as the recording of this webinar and share in future editions of the Early Childhood newsletter, as well as post on our Early Childhood website. If you have questions, and I know that this is a new webinar software for many of us, there should be a chat box that you can open. You can type those in. I will see them, and at the end of the webinar, I will respond to them. If they are specific to you, please include your contact information, and I will follow up with you. All right, with that, we will go ahead and get started. This presentation will provide an overview of Louisiana's Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate and discuss critical information for programs and teachers. So we will start with an overview of Louisiana's vision for teacher support to really understand how the Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate is supporting the broader goals of the department and for Louisiana's early childhood. We will review an understanding of the Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate, where it has come from and what that means. We'll talk about the different ways to earn the Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate with a specific focus on the changes that took place as of July 1, 2018, and what that means in preparing for our requirement for July 2019. And then finally, we'll conclude by talking about what it would mean to attend a BESI-approved Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate program. As far as objectives, we hope that by the end of this presentation, we will have reviewed the importance of the Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate in supporting Louisiana's childcare teachers. We will understand who needs to have their Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate by July of 2019, so less than a year away. And then we will identify where training for the Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate must be completed as of July 2018. So to begin, we'll review an overview of Louisiana's vision for teacher support. So over the past 5 years, Louisiana has worked to unify the early childhood system, birth to pre-K, to prepare all children for kindergarten. This has happened through a variety of ways, including developing shared high standards for what children should learn and what excellent teaching looks like, an assurance that teachers are excellent at interacting with children and guiding learning, which we measure through the class tool, an assurance that families can easily enroll and select the best option of care for their child by understanding what's available through coordinated enrollment and through louisianaschools.com. And then finally, but perhaps most important, understanding and ensuring that expectations for health, safety, and learning are consistent with adequate funding levels for programs that serve children. So a key component of this is providing professional training to teachers in childcare, Head Start, and pre-K to make sure that all programs and all teachers are receiving the support they need for the children in Louisiana. So as we all know, Louisiana has moved to have a strong focus on supporting positive interactions with children. So this is most clearly articulated through our shift to the class observation tool. So every birth to 5 classroom in Louisiana that receives public funding receives at least 2 class observations each year. And this provides us critical information about the quality of teacher-child interactions in every site. This includes childcare, Head Start, and pre-K. And annually, this totals over 14,000 observations statewide. This is a humongous accomplishment that has resulted from hard work from everybody around the field. There's a lot of time and effort, and it has shown us a lot of very good information about what the needs are in Louisiana classrooms. So these class observations result in a rating that's published on early childhood performance profiles. These are the profiles that can be found on Louisiana School and Center Finder, which is, of course, at www.louisianaschools.com. Below, we're explaining the key features of the class tool, of which I'm sure we are familiar with, but the focus on the environment, that warm, positive environment, the organization of daily routines, and then helping children learn concepts and connect ideas through dialogue and play. These are the key features of what we're looking for to support teachers to excel in and then evaluate through their class observations. Louisiana has validated that this rating and process correlates with child outcomes through some studies that were completed by the University of Virginia. And then, of course, we can't overstate the importance of the Early Childhood Community Network in this process. So the Early Childhood Community Network, which includes representatives from all of our publicly funded programs, have worked together to really get the system launched. And through that, have really developed a shared language around improvement related to and tied back to that class tool. This slide really articulates the three key areas of professional development and support for improved interactions. So the main bucket that we're focusing on today is that related to teacher preparation. So this has been through the new child care teacher preparation minimums, so the attending a quality program, which we will talk about more today, and then the implementation of the early childhood ancillary certificate. This also connects to the birth to kindergarten pathway, which is a bachelor's degree and associate degree pathway that we hope will launch in Louisiana within the next year. We also practice and support as a community improved interactions through opportunities for coaching and training and high quality instructional materials. So these are through our child care resource and referral centers, mental health consultation, accessing high quality trainers, and then of course accessing high quality curriculum resources, receiving financial support and obtaining those if you are a type 3 child care center, and then receiving training and support with the Teaching Strategies Gold platform. So again, these are the three key buckets of where we, as a state, have all across our communities worked to really align and support teachers with the class tool. Okay, so now that we've reviewed a little bit of the context for the Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate, we can get into some more of the specifics around what this certificate is all about. So the Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate resulted from a set of policies that were passed in December 2014 by the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education, or BESE. So there were two key policies that were established to help unify expectations for all early childhood teachers. The first of those is what we will focus on today, was the establishment of the Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate. The Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate requirement was established as a minimum expectation for child care lead teachers by 2019. So we will talk about this in detail in the forthcoming slides, but as a summary, by July of 2019, all lead teachers in publicly funded centers that have been working as a lead teacher for 24 or more months, and I'll talk about that in detail, must have the Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate. The certificate can be earned at no cost by presenting a qualifying credential. It's the only teaching certificate processed by our certification team where that's true. And then qualifying credentials earned prior to July 2018, or really begun prior to July 2018, now that we're in July of 2018, can be completed at any provider. We've started to get questions, how will we be checking this once we get to July of 2019? So child care directors will note that the program assurances that they sign every year for the past 2 years have had an indicator that this will be included in their assurances starting in 2019. They will be required to assure that their teachers who have been there for 24 months have the ancillary certificate, and those who have been there for less than 24 months are in the process of earning their ancillary certificate. And so that will be seen when we release those assurances next spring. The second part of the Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate is the requirements around where training is completed for those credentials. So beginning in July 2018 of this month, there was a shift requiring that teachers that are earning their Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate by demonstrating the completion of a CDA or technical diploma must attend a BESI-approved Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate program. These are teacher preparation programs that have been thoroughly reviewed and vetted by the state and by the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education. They are evaluated at the same standard with the same high expectation as all teacher preparation programs that would traditionally certify a teacher. I will talk about the details of who needs to be attending one of those approved programs now that we've passed that July 2018 in the upcoming slides. And then number 2 on this slide, create a specialized birth to kindergarten bachelor's degree field of study and teaching certificate. This is the secondary policy. So at the same time as the establishment of the Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate, BESI established a birth to kindergarten bachelor's degree and associate degree. So once offered, this degree will really prepare teachers at a bachelor degree level or an associate degree level to really work with the group of teachers that are serving children ages birth to 5, which we do not currently have in the state. It will provide a specialized focus, and the first 3 classes of that bachelor's and associate degree will align to the ancillary certificate. This is a great opportunity for teachers who are earning their ancillary certificate to stack and build into that associate or bachelor degree were they to be interested in that over time. This is the final note I'll say about that for the rest of this presentation. Currently, we do not have any institutions that are offering the birth to kindergarten bachelor's degree or associate degree. However, there are many 4- and 2-year colleges around the state that are interested and working on that application, and we really hope that they will be ready to launch as soon as next fall. Another key component that I want to make sure we emphasize and remind people of is the connection of the Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate to the School Readiness Tax Credit. So last year, we passed a set of policies to realign our school readiness tax credits with the ancillary certificate. We want to make sure that teachers who are meeting that Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate requirement are rewarded for the work that they have done to prepare themselves for their profession, and that we're rewarding teachers that are staying in that child care field and making that commitment to their center and growing in their role. So starting this year, 2018, individuals who have their Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate will be able to qualify for Early Learning Center Teacher 2. Additionally, teachers who have demonstrated their eligibility for the staff school readiness tax credit at least once before and qualify for the ancillary certificate will be able to qualify for Early Learning Center Teacher 3. Teachers that have demonstrated that they have been eligible for the school readiness tax credit at least 2 years prior, again beginning with 2017, and qualified for the ancillary certificate will be able to earn at Early Learning Center Teacher 4. The way that teachers have been asked to demonstrate their evidence of eligibility is by turning in a second tax form back to Louisiana Pathways. So anybody who completed or assisted people in completing their school readiness tax credits for teachers this year noticed that they received 2 tax credit forms with the directions to mail one of those back to Louisiana Pathways. You can see that by doing so, the tax credits will be significantly, potentially increased. So please make sure that you are passing that message on. Okay, now we'll talk a little bit more about the details of how you can earn the Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate. So this slide sums up the two key pieces of the Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate. In the left, you see the policy requirement to implement the Early Childhood Ancillary Credential as a requirement for lead teachers. So this is the requirement that beginning in July of 2019, all lead teachers working in a publicly funded child care center will have the Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate as a minimum credential, or will be working towards it. The second key component is the statewide system of teacher preparation programs, also known as BESI-approved Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate programs. We'll talk about that requirement shortly. So there are multiple ways to earn the Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate. As of July 2018, there are really, and excuse the misnumbering here, there are 4 current ways to earn the Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate. I'm going to talk through these carefully and slowly so that we can understand the changes that have taken place. So the first way to earn the Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate is by demonstrating a complete CDA credential and a high school diploma or equivalent. So that means that you have earned your Child Development Associate from the Council for Professional Recognition, and you have your high school diploma or equivalent. There was a key change beginning July 1, 2018 for those qualifying through the CDA certificate. Beginning July 1, 2018, the requirement is that teachers complete their CDA hours at a BESI-approved Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate program. However, teachers that had already completed 36 hours or more of those 120 hours on July 1 do not need to attend a BESI-approved Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate program. They may, if they choose to enroll, but they are not required to in order to earn the certificate. The Ancillary Certificate application asks teachers if they had completed, it now has been updated to ask teachers if they had completed 36 hours or more as of July 1, 2018. If they had, all they need to demonstrate is the CDA and the high school diploma. If they had not, they need to demonstrate that they attended a BESI-approved Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate program along with their CDA. And again, we'll talk about this more throughout the presentation. The second way a teacher could earn the Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate is through a technical diploma or Certificate of Technical Studies. This is a much less common pathway for Louisiana, however, it is available. Beginning July 1, 2018, individuals earning the Ancillary Certificate through a technical diploma must attend a BESI-approved Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate program. However, similar to above, teachers that have begun their coursework prior to July 1, 2018 may attend any program, whether it's approved or not. The next way is through an associate degree in an early childhood related field from a regionally accredited college or university. There are no changes to the requirement around the associate degree. Similarly, there are no changes to the requirement around the bachelor degree or higher. This remains a way to qualify for the Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate. The last note here is around early childhood career diplomas that are recognized by Louisiana Pathways. Early childhood career diplomas that had begun prior to July 1, 2018 may be used to earn the Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate. However, going forward, early childhood career diplomas will not be recognized as a way to earn the Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate. Only if the coursework had begun prior to July 1, 2018, may that certificate or career diploma, be used to earn the Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate. This slide provides an overview of how one would apply for the Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate once they're ready. So following the July 1, 2018 change, an individual would obtain their CDA or technical diploma from a BESI-approved program unless they meet the criteria where they were exempt. They would obtain their AA or their BA. They would take documentation of those credentials and submit the Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate application and transcripts to the LDOE. Once that's submitted, there's a processing time, and then they will receive or be able to receive access to the ancillary certificate. A few key important notes here. Individuals who attend a BESI-approved Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate program for their CDA or technical diploma will receive a transcript upon completion of that program. They are expected to turn in that transcript with their CDA and their high school diploma to document where they completed their training. This is very similar to the documentation you would turn in if you were doing your associate degree. You would turn in documentation that you completed your associate degree, your transcript, and your application. So for individuals who have gone to an approved program for their CDA or technical diploma, they will receive a transcript at the end that should be turned in with their application. A second important thing to note is that the ancillary certificate, once it has been processed, is not mailed out to the individual. It's available online at teachlouisiana.net and can be printed. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the July 2019 lead teacher requirement. So beginning in July of 2019, lead teachers in Type 3 child care centers that have been working as a lead teacher for 2 or more years, so for 24 months or more, must have the Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate as a minimum credential. So that means, as a minimum credential, means the teacher must have the Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate or another traditional teaching certificate, such as a pre-K to 3 teaching certificate, would also qualify. If the teacher has been working as a lead teacher for less than 24 months, they are permitted to still be in the process of completing the training that will lead to the ancillary certificate. However, the director will be asked to assure that they will complete the training within 24 months of their start date as lead teacher. Now we're going to just talk through a few examples of what that would mean for start date as lead teacher. So for individuals who began work as a lead teacher prior to the Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate requirement, meaning that they began working as a lead teacher prior to July 1, 2017, they must have the Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate as of July 1, 2019. That's because that is 24 months prior is July 1, 2017. Teachers that began working as a lead teacher during the phase-in of the Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate, so they started working as a lead teacher after July 1 of 2017, they must be in the process of earning the Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate, or if they're ahead of the game, they already have it, and they must complete it within 24 months of their start date as lead teacher. And then finally, going forward, for teachers who begin as a lead teacher after the Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate requirement, meaning they begin working as a lead teacher after July 1 of 2019, they will have 24 months from the start date as lead teacher to meet that requirement. An important note here, teachers that move into a lead teacher position still have 24 months from their start date as a lead teacher, meaning that if you were to promote an assistant teacher to a lead teacher, that 24 months clock starts then. This chart provides additional examples and is contained within our FAQ document that will be linked later in the presentation. It shows you a few examples of when a teacher might start if they were in that first category where they began prior to the ancillary certificate requirement and began prior to July 1 of 2017 and need their certificate by July 1 of 2019. A few examples of individuals who began during these phase-in, so started as a lead teacher after July of 2017 and may not need the certificate by July 1, 2019, but will soon after. And then finally, an example of teachers going forward. A few more details about how you would renew and submit your application for the ancillary certificate. Teachers who have earned the ancillary certificate must renew with every 3 years through an online application process. So the certificate must be renewed every 3 years at no cost. It is renewed at the request of the individual's employer. The application must include documentation of either 45 clock hours, 4.5 CEUs, or 1 3-credit hour of training in early childhood care and education, as well as 80 hours of work experience with young children or families within the past 3 years. Those of you who are familiar with the CDA may note that these are the same requirements as the CDA renewal. If an individual has the CDA and would prefer to demonstrate their renewal with a renewed CDA credential, they may do that instead of turning in documentation of the clock hours and work experience. That is a choice for the individual and the director to make. The one caveat here is that CDAs that lapse, as in if you don't renew your CDA, it's not super easy to start again. You may have to start from the beginning if you ever wanted an active CDA again. However, for purposes of the state and for purposes of the Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate, you're not required to demonstrate a renewed CDA. You will be able to renew your ancillary certificate just by documenting that you've met the requirements. A new key feature as of April 2018, the Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate and all teacher certifications moved online through a system called Teach Live. So as of April 2018, the initial application and renewal application can be found and submitted at Teach Live. The link is here. It's also at the end of the presentation, as well as in our early childhood newsletter. This is also where most of your questions regarding the ancillary certificate, especially those about specific applications or individuals, should be submitted as a first step. Each individual is asked to create their own account as an educator and submit the application. It is through that same account that any follow-up questions that you have will be submitted. While we know this is another system to log into, this will really help streamline making sure everybody's getting the right answers and that we can track exactly whose case is associated with what questions to get the best information to you. Okay, so for this portion of the presentation, we'll talk a little bit more about the specifics of who needs to attend a BSEE-approved Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate program. So again, this is the same slide as before, but as a reminder, there are two key components to the Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate. The first, on the left, is the implementation of the credential requirement by July 2019. The second is the requirements about where the training is completed. So we are moving as a state toward the system where we can feel 100% sure that all teachers who are working with our youngest children are completing their training with providers that are highly qualified and have put together thoughtful, logical, structured preparation experiences, so that we know that the valuable time that teachers are investing in these preparation programs is well spent. We also want to be sure that we're financially supporting teachers to complete these required credentials, and I'll talk a little bit later, but lead teachers that qualify can attend a BSEE-approved Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate program with a tuition scholarship from the state. So that is, again, to support teachers that are working in this incredibly important position to attend one of these high-quality preparation experiences. We'll talk a little bit more about what makes these programs high quality, but as I mentioned, BSEE-approved Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate programs have been thoroughly reviewed by the Department of Education and by the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education. We verified that there are applied practice experiences, mentoring, coaching, professional growth opportunities, as well as those key content areas related to the CDA. That way we can be sure that teachers that are attending these programs are leaving both having completed those clock hours and attained that key CDA knowledge, but also had extensive experience to practice their skills and get valuable feedback. So again, who needs to attend one of these programs? This implicates the qualifications 1 and 2 here. So those attaining the Child Development Associate or a technical diploma as of July 1 are expected to attend a BSEE-approved Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate program. For individuals who are earning their Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate program through a CDA in infant, toddler, or preschool, as of July 1, individuals who had completed 36 hours or less of their CDA hours must enroll in and complete a BSEE-approved program in order to use their CDA to earn the Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate. As of July 1, 2018, individuals who had completed more than 36 hours of their CDA training may continue to complete their hours at any program they like. This may be a BSEE-approved Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate program. It may be a separate provider of their choosing. The intention here is that we know many individuals have been working on their CDA for a long time, and we do not want to require anybody to start over if they're so close to the finish line. Those programs are available to them as long as they still need to attain a significant amount of hours, if that's an appealing option or possibly just the most convenient option for them. However, it's not required if they had more than 36 hours as of July 1, 2018. Similarly, for the technical diploma, if an individual had already begun their coursework as of July 1, 2018, and can document that, which they should be able to do with any enrollment paperwork, they may complete the remaining coursework at a non-BSEE-approved program. However, any individual that is starting a new technical diploma must attend an approved program. And finally, as I mentioned before, career diplomas approved by Louisiana Pathways will no longer qualify unless they have been approved or receive approval later. If an individual had already begun coursework in one of those programs, they may complete it, but they must have begun prior to July 1, 2018. So you may have seen throughout this presentation a reference to an approved program waiver. So while we hope and intend that all teachers who are starting their training for a CDA and technical diploma can access and enroll in an approved early childhood ancillary certificate program, we know that this may not be the case in every region of the state. If this is the situation, we have developed an approved program waiver process. There are 3 circumstances in which an individual may be considered for an approved program waiver. So again, just to clarify, the approved program waiver is for an individual who may have fallen into the requirement to attend a BESI-approved early childhood ancillary certificate. Either they had less than 36 hours of their CDA as of July 1, 2018, or they had not yet begun their technical diploma. But for geographical reasons, they cannot access it. So let's talk through those 3 categories for which an individual would be considered. There is an approved program waiver for unserved parishes. So individuals who do not have a program available in their parish as of July 1, 2018 will qualify for a very simple approved program waiver. If you look at the approved program waiver, we include a list of the parishes for which there was no known program available as of July 1, 2018. There is an approved program waiver for limited capacity in parish program. We have a few regions of the state where there is a lot of childcare and potentially only a few BESI-approved programs. For individuals who have attempted to enroll in a BESI-approved early childhood ancillary certificate program, but could not because the program was full, a waiver process will be available. We ask that individuals in those circumstances complete or receive a letter from the program indicating that this occurred, that they were at full capacity and could not be considered in order to get the waiver. And the BESI-approved early childhood ancillary certificate programs are aware of that and will be providing those letters. And then the third category is other geographic availability concerns. So additional geographic concerns will be considered on exception. Evidence and explanation is required for that category. A few more details about the process for the approved program waiver. So the application for the approved program waiver should be submitted and received prior to submitting the early childhood ancillary certificate application, and documentation of their approved waiver should be turned in with the application. So this means that if you are an individual who could not access a BESI-approved program because you did not have one in your region, you would apply for the approved program waiver prior to applying for the early childhood ancillary certificate application. You would receive approval if you lived in one of the parishes on the list, and then you would turn in that documentation with your early childhood ancillary certificate application. Applications for the approved program waiver will be reviewed quarterly. So if you look at that application, you can see when you would need to turn in the approved program waiver in order to, for certain, receive a decision. There may be circumstances where you hear back sooner, but that is the deadline, and those happen quarterly. There are 2 key large financial investments that are supporting teachers in obtaining and maintaining their early childhood ancillary certificate. So the first is Louisiana Pathways and through the Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate Scholarship. Qualifying teachers that attend a BESI-approved Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate program can receive a full tuition scholarship covering the cost of tuition through Louisiana Pathways. Teachers must currently be working in a Type 3 center, and they may not already qualify for the Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate. In addition, they may not have nearly all of their CDA hours completed. Teachers must continue working in the Type 3 center throughout the duration of their program. So if a teacher were to change between Type 3 childcare centers, that's okay. However, because these are federal funds, the requirements are that the teacher is working in a publicly funded childcare center. This is a very significant financial investment from the state, and it is because we truly identify and believe that these high-quality preparation opportunities are essential to teachers. We're very enthusiastic about the opportunity to be able to provide this high-quality training to teachers at little to no cost, and want to continue to do so as funds allow. Okay, and then the second piece, which I touched on the very beginning of this presentation, but is so essential, we want to talk about multiple times, is the alignment of the school readiness tax credit with the early childhood ancillary certificate. So beginning in 2018, teachers who have the ancillary certificate will be able to qualify for additional credits. And just as I said in the beginning, teachers must be submitting, if they're submitting their documentation that they've earned the tax credit before, they will be able to qualify for higher levels. Again, and as always, this is assuming they meet the criteria of the school readiness tax credit. So they must be working in a publicly funded center for at least 6 months during the year for 30 hours a week. Okay, the last section of this presentation, we'll talk a little bit more about what are the features of the BESI-approved Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate programs. So I've mentioned throughout this presentation how essential this is for our child care teachers, what a shift this will be for our state, and we want to give a little bit more context as to who are these programs and why are they so important. Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate programs prepare child care teachers to manage a successful learning environment in Louisiana's Unified Early Childhood System. This is done through a variety of ways. So a teacher that graduates from a BESI-approved program will be prepared to lead classroom interactions that promote child learning and development. So BESI-approved programs have been coached and reviewed to make sure that their coursework and practice experiences are closely aligned with the class tool and competencies. So as part of these programs, teachers receive practice class observations, they receive feedback on the class tool, making sure they really understand what is the content that's being taught and what is the class tool really looking for. Teachers who graduate from one of these prepared programs use high-quality instructional tools that align with Louisiana's early learning development standards. So we provide guidance throughout the curriculum that they're completing on how they should use curriculum in their classroom, as well as provide guidance on how to do formative assessment and using tools such as Teaching Strategies Gold as part of their classroom interactions. So these two pieces together, a focus on leading classroom interactions and the use of high-quality instructional tools, are embedded within the CDA coursework to make sure that child care teachers attending a BESI-approved Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate program are really prepared to succeed in the Louisiana early childhood system. And then finally, they are prepared to apply a foundational knowledge of child development and learning. So all of those important key knowledge areas that are included in the CDA certificate are included in every one of these approved programs. The coursework includes key knowledge on child development and result in a qualifying credential for the early childhood ancillary certificate, whether that's a technical diploma or a CDA. There are several key unique features of the early childhood ancillary certificate programs. So these programs are carefully reviewed and they work closely with their community to make sure that they're responsive to the needs expressed by the child care directors, teachers, and other stakeholders in that region. The coursework is carefully reviewed and approved by the Board of Education, so that's BESE. They include an average of 30 hours of applied practice experiences, typically including coaching, mentoring, professional learning communities. The assessments that teachers complete in these approved programs focus on active demonstration of skill mastery, including a minimum of 2 class observations, as I mentioned before. So this means that teachers are not just asked to take practice, multiple choice, and fill in the blank tests to demonstrate their mastery. They're asked to really show that they can take a skill and apply it in their classroom. Early childhood community networks are involved in program development and management, making sure that the program is responsive to the local needs. And then finally, candidates receive financial support to attend through Louisiana Pathway Scholarships. Over the past 3 years, Louisiana has rapidly developed these programs. So we started with none, grew to an initial cohort of 4 programs around the state, and since then have grown to now have 21 approved early childhood ancillary certificate programs. So they cover a wide range of provider types and backgrounds. We have approved programs that are institutions of higher ed, including community and technical colleges. We have professional development companies. 5 of our CCR&Rs have been approved, and 1 school district. Not reflected here are the programs that were just recently approved, which includes 1 high school in Bossier was approved to offer a jumpstart pathway for students who have not even graduated high school yet to get an approved training experience, as well as 2 more institutions of higher ed. Coursework is offered in a variety of ways. So over almost half the programs now offer some elements of online coursework. An important point to note about the online coursework, any program that's offering online coursework is also supporting that program with aligned on-the-ground experiences and coaching. So no program is 100% online. However, we do recognize the flexibility and the benefits of having online coursework with busy schedules, and many programs have elected to use that option, either partially or fully. All programs provide flexibility in scheduling. There are some programs that meet after work, some that meet on the weekend, some that meet every other week, just depending on what they have learned from talking to those in their community. And then we're continuing to expand the number of programs. So we have supported these first 21 programs through Believe and Prepare Early Childhood. And this year we will initiate the launch of a statewide provider who will eventually reach all parishes of the state. So this is the list of the current approved programs that are operating around the state. If you click on that link to take you to the BESE approved list, you'll be able to see where they are and the parishes they currently serve. Again, we are going to be working to pilot and then expand a statewide option later this year. So this will be an option that offers coursework online, supported by community-based experiences. They will begin in a few parishes that do not currently have an option available, and over the course of the next 2 years, expand so that every parish of the state has at least one option available to them. Okay, finally, we just want to share a few key resources. So there is a list of early childhood ancillary certificate programs. This is updated frequently as programs get approved or as programs start offering to new parishes. There is a long set of ancillary certificate FAQs. This document has every question that we have answered and most of the information that we've talked about in this webinar. And then finally, a link to the Teach Live LA portal. So this is where questions related to specific cases around the early childhood ancillary certificate should be submitted, as well as your application. We have a few minutes left, and I'm happy to talk through any questions that are submitted to the chat. It does not look like we've received any questions at this time. I'll wait for just a few minutes to see if anything is submitted. Again, we will post this webinar recording online, and we will also post the slides online for anybody who wants to reference or share with others. All right, I'm not seeing any questions come in. If you have any, feel free to reach out. I want to thank you all for taking a few minutes, or more than a few minutes, almost an hour, to learn a little bit more about the Early Childhood Ancillary Certificate. Hope you all have a great day and a great weekend.